I think those are good points that you guys have brought up as far as like I said, a lot of that, some of these discussions and things are in English and the language needs to be translated or whatever. At the same time, should we absolve that responsibility off people in Japan? Because there are people like yourselves who are mixed race Japanese that speak the language, that live here, that these conversations happen from these communities. Zainichi Koreans speak, mixed race Japanese people speak. So there are these experiences and these lived experiences and things that are happening in Japan that are in the native language as well, and are still either ignored or not taken seriously. So should that not also be something that's held to task or recognized?
I think it should be, simply it should be. I mean, I think that, kind of going back to like, what else can we do? I'd imagine like, even in the education system, acknowledging the history of mixed race people, or just colorism in Japan, and like starting you know starting those conversations in school, really, right? And acknowledging the history that exists in Japan around people who are not fully Japanese, or who are of the mixed race experience or what have you. And that way, maybe it'll hit more at home for folks, and it will make people not feel like it's a separate conversation. Oh, it's just an American issue. It's not a Japan issue. It's, really start document. I mean, the whole point of a lot of this project, I would imagine, is to start that documentation and the dialogue, and, the history of what exists. But yeah, I don't know if I answered that question, but I think there is a responsibility, a moral responsibility in acknowledging, because you're erasing an experience if you don't, experiencing the experience of Gino, and you who are living it right now. It's like, where's your story in it? You have one, and it should be talked about, and it should be honored. Um, it should be a part of the Japanese experience. It is Japanese. Yeah.
And so that brings us to this question, the next question, which is culture an excuse for racism? So kind of meaning behind the question is, like, you get oftentimes the excuse that, oh, well, it's just because this is Japanese, or it's because that's just the way we do it, or that's this, right? So, but is culture an excuse for racism?
Do you want me to go? I can. I'll go. I hear that. I mean, I think everybody hears it. I think the obvious answer is no, it's not an excuse. Mainly because culture is always changing. So to say it's our culture that we're like this, I mean, we heard this in America as well, right? Before interracial marriage was okay, or also it was just a part of our culture, or this is just tradition, like, quite frankly, and this is a little bit different, but like, tradition, I don't know, saying we've always done it this way is literally the killer of any type of innovation in the world, whether it be business or progress, So I'm very much a proponent of, like, no, it's not an excuse, mainly because they use it as an excuse to essentially keep the inertia from moving forward, right? Because generally conservative wants to keep seeing things the same, really just to hold power, right? I think that's what they want. They want to maintain the power that they have. But when you think about culture in general, it's always changing. It's an ever moving thing. There's not one, like, as much as any culture, or Japan in particular, like, someone say, hey, this is what Japanese culture is, it's constantly changing. Like, it was once Japanese culture for women to stay at home all day, or not stay at home with their kids the whole time. But now you're seeing, like, it's obviously, that's changed clearly. There's so many women working more, probably more, there should be more if you're really talking about people that want to work, like that kind of stuff. Or, it was something as simple as that, or like, it was the culture to be able to go to a large corporation and stay your whole career, which is not the case. It was culture to, we're talking business now, it was culture to go to, work 70 plus hours a week, but that's not the case anymore. The world, especially Japan, is at an inflection point where things need to change. And to say that this is our culture is really just an excuse because you don't want to change. And I'm particularly passionate about this just because you see it in sports all the time. I see that people have this kind of inertia saying, this is how we always do. This is either how we always train, or this is always how we treat people. There's this, obviously the senpai kohai rule that people talk about. And I'm like, in sports here, if you're like the senpai, you should play more than the kohai. But if the kohai is better, then he should be playing because this is a competition. So these type of things I'm constantly battling. And I don't think, as much as you should respect culture, things that keep people subservient, or I don't want to say go to the words oppressed, but like to a certain marginalized, I think it needs to change, because it gets to the point where what is it right or wrong is the question you should be asking, as opposed to saying, is this okay? Is this okay with our culture? I think those are the conversations that should be having instead. So, yeah.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I also agree with that. I just want to question that what kind of culture is an excuse of not talking about racism? Like, we don't really have that. Maybe we are really feeling like uncomfortable talking about like sensitive issues, but I think that's not really like culture related. It's just we kind of keep ignoring those, and when we start a conversation, it's always uncomfortable. Like the States is still like uncomfortable talking about race, especially for white people. But because we are majority Japanese and we are not a victim mostly when we born and raised in Japan only, it is really uncomfortable. But yeah, culture should not be an excuse. Yeah, I agree with that.
Ditto to everything. I think that if you want to admit your culture is racist, then that's a start, if that's the reality of things. But yeah, I mean, Gino kind of hit the nail on the head. I think it's just an really ignorant excuse not to want to expand and move forward. I think it's a tactic to keep certain powers in place, and I do think it's a tactic of oppression. I really do. And and at the same time, how do we preserve the parts that I think what Reno said is right. It's like it's not culture if you're it's not talking about it's I'm stumbling, but it's not culture if you don't want to talk about race. It's just not even shouldn't be in the same dialogue. And yeah, I think there's a personality that, a certain way of being, like a hierarchy too, that exists in Japan, and like how things should be. And it stems from like a long lineage. And I think though, as each generation comes about and like, like media, and there's more just globalism and just social media connecting folks from all over the place, like those changes are going to happen. And I think, the older generations are afraid that the parts of the cultures that they love are going to get lost, but the parts of the culture that they love are maybe embedded in racism that needs to go, and you hear that in America too a lot, like, like we're going to lose the American spirit if we do this or that. And it's just like, no, you're going to lose racism if we do this or that. And that's what you don't want to lose, but people don't want to talk about that. But yeah, I'm just kind of hamster wheeling here, but everything said perfectly by y'all.
All right. Oh, you were going to say something, Gino?
No, I was obviously agreeing with her. I'm always just curious to think about when it comes to the conversation of, preserving culture, and like sometimes I'm not sure how making sure someone who is having a tough time or a rough experience, how that can, and then helping them essentially kind of relieve themselves of whatever mental pain that they have. I'm not sure if I don't know how that should be a part of anybody's culture, right? So and that's the biggest thing about Japan. I don't think Japan actually has like a more aggressive approach to like, or America. I mean, actually, America's pretty aggressive when it comes to that. I won't put America in this conversation, but Japan, I don't think there's distinctly aggressive about saying, hey, this group, we don't like this group, but we're going to do something to make it particularly hard for this group. But I do think there should be a more active role in making it easier for people who aren't necessarily fitting in those boxes. So that's kind of what I wanted to kind of clarify when I was saying things about change and culture. It's like, I think a lot of times we should create a culture where you're helping out the people who are having the toughest time. And I think Japan actually does a pretty good job of that when it comes to like socioeconomic issues, and they do have a pretty high net. And so that's why it's good for people who are kind of struggling financially. But there's a whole nother, we're talking about intersectionality, there's a whole nother kind of, I don't know, dimension that's not being discussed right now, and it's leaving people kind of out in the dust. So that's why I do feel like that same type of empathy and compassion that's used to help people in a socioeconomic status should be used in the lens of race, ethnicity, sexuality, and kind of self-identification. I think those should probably use as well. So it's just, I think it can only help the culture, to be quite honest with you, but that's kind of what I wanted to clarify. It's just kind of not necessarily, hey, this has to change. It's like whatever kind of is already in Japanese culture of helping people in one lens, it should be brought up in other lenses as well. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think in terms of culture, maybe we have how can I put it? Like, it's really sensitive when we try to relate like social issues to other like categories. For example, like marketing or sports or music or entertainment or other stuff. So we don't really like feel comfortable, or not more than that. We're not really used to like talking about like social issues. Because when the Nike promoted have you ever seen that? I think it was a promotion of the racism in Japan, and we don't really feel uncomfortable with that. And there's a lot of backlash, but that really came from, maybe it can't be described as culture, but we have a tendency that we don't really want to relate the social, like the company's marketing to social issue. So the company should not talk about like social issues in Japan. And yeah, also music or entertainment. We rarely see like people who are singing about racism or like sexism in Japan. We only have love songs or like other like fun, chill songs without like not much strong like social injustice or issues compared to the States. I really see the difference, like huge difference. So maybe that will be a part of culture, but I think it's not really a long history behind that. So yeah, I think we need a revolution. Someone has to start a conversation. Then we have to get used to talking about like social issues in interpersonal level, companies, entertainments, or other categories. So yeah, that will be maybe described as culture, but I'm not sure.
Right. People tend to get defensive when someone points out some kind of issue with something they're comfortable with, and it's, the culture, the country, the way that they behave or whatever. And so I've seen the Nike commercial you're talking about, and so yeah, there was a backlash. And so I think people got defensive on that. And so,
What about there was a second one as well, though, right? Like one more geared towards gender inequality. So I saw that one. I personally, I like both of them, but what was I didn't get to see, I didn't look up the YouTube comments on the female one, but did I have a different reaction? Because technically that's a social issue as well. Does anybody know anything about that?
I didn't check the comments against that, but maybe we don't really feel comfortable because like marketing, like company marketing, will not really like touch us about talking about the issues. Yeah.
I think media, public backlash wise, the one about mixed race and racism got the biggest negative reaction from a lot of people to, who were in defense of I guess what they felt was their culture being attacked or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it's
Go ahead, please.
I have a question for you guys. I guess it's like what is the best way you think, or what is the way that will get through to the Japanese people if like media is not an outlet that people are going to accept, if maybe one-to-one conversations make people uncomfortable? I mean, the culture inherently is very avoidant and very passive. That's kind of embedded in like how we socially interact, I think. So it's what is the outlet that could start like that would be effective in allowing people to like feel safe, I guess, in having these dialogues? Is it possible?
I hope it's possible. I think the media as well, but education from the early like stage, like kindergarten or like elementary. We think that English is just a tool of the subject of the exam, or we don't really see like learning English is learning about different opinions or like the global perspective. So that is also the language is also the key in terms of education, or also we needed education in terms of like human rights, sort of like
self-advocacy even.
Yeah,
general. Yeah.
And we need to talk about like social issues. It doesn't have to be social, but issues in general, like they have to like need open-minded like conversation, an open conversation. Yeah, in the early stage, if possible.
I 100% agree. And I don't necessarily think media isn't an avenue, but I do think directly saying this is a problem is probably not going to go over well. But for example, if the stereotype of African American individual is someone who is a thug or something along those lines, I think, or maybe it's happening now, but having an African American individual who speaks Japanese and is kind of not having that stereotype and putting them in kind of in I won't say upfront role, but a role within media, whether it be around like kind of, I don't know, like a drama or something like that, like those finding like more subtle examples to say, hey, like this isn't necessarily true. Having, if you're talking about half people, like people, those type of people not in a role where they're not an athlete or something, because right now you're seeing a lot of what I've seen is in Japan is like you see a lot of half Japanese kids or half black, half African kids who are in sports, like Sunny Brown, Hachimura, Namiya, obviously, Cambridge. Like there's a whole bunch. So I love seeing the conversation being happening about that because they represent Japan, right? So those conversations are happening, but I'd love to see that being done in a different setting outside of sports, because you're technically kind of reinforcing those kind of athletic stereotypes. You're like, oh, well, he's Japanese black, so athletic, like those type of things. So I like to see it in another way where like you have a teacher in a drama or, like, so those are more subtle ways to kind of change the perception of people. That's why I do think representation is particularly important in this. So, yeah.
What do you wish people in Japan would be more aware of or do about racism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's to give value to it, believe that it's real, you know, I think to believe the experiences that people share with them.